everybody, Pastor Randy here. Great to be with you today on Making It Simple. Always enjoy our time together. And I pray that these lessons are a blessing to you. They come straight from my heart. You know, one of the values that I find in teaching is being able to express those things that are in my heart. Because one of the differences, and again, I don't say this because I absolutely have no intentions or desire to pat myself on the back. But one of the things that I really strive to do is connect. Because when we talk about real things and real life and all of those things, everybody can associate with that. Everybody can find their place in that. And that's exactly how Jesus taught. And when we begin to look at what these passages are saying, even back here in the book of wisdom, the book of Proverbs, we begin to see how that ties to real life. We begin to see how it applies to everything that we deal with every day. So we ended off yesterday in the lesson yesterday talking about the difference, how discernment comes into play in seeing the difference between godly wisdom and worldly wisdom, because they are two very, very different things. It allows us to see through certain things, and it allows us to see in certain things. So here we pick back up, and we're going to go into the next section of this passage that we're looking at, beginning in verse 3. And I think this is very, very important, because not only this is why it matters, but we begin to see some results of what we're doing and how we get there. You know, when we go to the New Testament, we find the Gospels say, seek and you will find. Well, doesn't it make sense if we go backwards just a little bit and understand the process of that? If I'm seeking and finding, we begin to make a pause there for a minute and have to ask the question, do I know what I'm looking for? That's where everything changes. See, if I know what I'm looking for, then the ability to seek gets a little stronger, because there's a desire there to seek. And then I know what I'm looking for there. When I find it, there's not a question that that's what I was looking for. And that's how we tie back to this lesson today. So the writer goes on. We left yesterday talking about directing your heart to understanding. So we're pointing our heart to understanding. That is a willingness to learn, a willingness to hear. The writer goes on and says, furthermore, simply meaning in addition to, outside of where we are here. Here's the next level. Here's the next step, if you will. If you call out to insight and lift your voice to understanding. Okay, let's look here for just a moment. If. That word has become so important in not only in my own personal life and in my teaching style, but just in general. If changes the entire conversation. It's almost like but. These small words now are no longer insignificant in a conversation. If, but, all these small, the, a, all these very, very small words, we begin to understand, wait a minute, these words have great impact. Because as we read here, furthermore, so in addition to, beyond the directing your heart to understanding. So that's the pathway we're on. If you call out. If you call out. The key word there is if. In other words, if you are willing to engage, which also leaves the door open to if you're not. So then we begin to realize, wait a minute, a large portion of seeking and finding, a large portion of asking and getting answers, well, that's based on me. We go back to school. The teacher gives you an assignment. It requires that you read the story, or you read the account, or you read the book, or you watch I guess in today's time, I saw this through the eyes of my girls. You watch the video, or whatever the platform is. But if you're not willing to do that, If you're not willing to seek and find, then you don't. That's what we find here as wisdom is speaking, because wisdom again is presented to us through the Proverbs as a person, as a character, as a real breathing being. And here wisdom is saying, if you look, if you're willing to engage, then we can get somewhere. Well, does that make sense? It certainly does. And then we go on and it gets even deeper. And this is what I love. It says, furthermore, if you call out, so there again, that's an intentional thing. If you call out to insight, Lord, I want to understand. Lord, I want to hear. I want to see. If you're willing to call out to insight and lift up your voice to understanding, I'm a sponge. I want to receive this information. And then this is beautiful. Verse 4. If. There's that word again. Why? Why? Because indeed, friends, if we're looking for something, and again, we can't escape that word. It's always there. We just don't always understand the importance of those two little letters. If I'm looking for something, I have to be the one to make the effort. I cannot expect it to come from anyone else. All right? The Lord may use vessels along the way, teachers, mentors, guides, whatever the case, to help guide us towards something. Indeed, guide our hearts, lean our hearts toward understanding. But we have to be mindful of what we hear. This is part of discernment. Because as we know today, many things that we hear, well, they're not true. Many things that we hear are deceiving. In other words, there's not truth in advertising. This is what it looks like, but that's actually not what it really is. This looks like a particular thing, but it's hidden over what it really is. And we could go on and on with a million different examples. But this sadly applies to Scripture. This sadly applies to biblical reasoning and teaching. There are a lot of, well, I don't know that there's any really nice way to put it. There are a lot of charlatans and carnival barkers out there, friends, that will make you believe or try to make you believe anything, whether that's in a church, whether it's on some type of online platform, fake gimmick contest. I'm going to pay people to make me look like somebody. I'm going to buy subscribers and tell you if I got these big numbers. Friends, the world is so filled with phony. Here's the thing. The Lord is saying, if you will seek, if you will look, if you will lean your heart to understanding, if you will direct your heart and your mind toward understanding, then we can do business. In other words, I can help you find what you're looking for, because if you trust me, then you'll know what I give you is absolutely real. So the writer goes on and he says, if you seek it like silver and search for it like hidden treasure, then. Now there's another principle, if and then. So if I do this, then this happens. Well, that makes sense, right? And we can apply that to pretty much every principle in life. If I touch the button on my camera, it turns on. If I touch it again, it turns off. If I get up out of this chair, then I'm standing. And we could go on and on and on with all the different examples. But here's what's important. I love this. If you seek, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and discover the knowledge of God. Now, let's look at that for just a moment. Seek for it like silver. I want you to think about that in the reality of the world. Precious metals, silver, gold, iron, zinc, whatever, all these different things, they exist. They're real. We know that. We see them every day, whether it's in jewelry or literal bars that someone buys and puts in their investment portfolio, whatever. They're real, but they have to be looked for. Mining, digging, whatever. That's real. So he says, seek for it like silver. It exists. It's real. The truth exists. The answers that we're looking for, whatever it is that we're seeking, it does exist. But are we willing to look for it? Discernment has to be a part of that. But also discernment, much like this silver, it must be sought after. And what does that require? And we're going to wrap up with this. It requires that we walk closer with the Lord. It requires that we walk closer with God in the intent to develop a closer relationship. In other words, it leads us to the understanding of who God is, what He's done for us, what He continues to do for us daily, and what tomorrow looks like if we're walking with Him. It all comes back down to the one word that I always teach, and that's relationship, and why that's important. If, then, seeking, all of these are action words, which says, I play a part. It's all right here, friends. We're going to continue to look at this tomorrow, Lord willing, as we come right back here to Making It Simple, seeking and understanding. What is discernment? God bless you. Have a great day.